Alright, what is going on YouTube? It's Defcon TCG. This is going to be the final video before Ascended Heroes is legal this Friday. And so I wanted to have some fun at locals. Obviously, this isn't a deck that's very fun for your opponent to play against because Claw Darkness is annoying, Oceanic Gloom is annoying, Clutch is annoying. So it's a bunch of interesting cards that kind of compile this deck. And this is going to be inspired from Daichi's top 4 list at EUIC. I believe in his list he was playing Xerosic's Machinations, but I wanted to try Eri. There's a lot of Goldango at my locals, and so I feel like getting the Frillish combination up with the Eri is pretty good if you just like snipe 1 or 2 SERs throughout the game. The game is kind of just over, which I really like. And then while you're item locking something like Charizard, they're going to eventually be able to evolve up into a Charizard naturally. So sometimes you can just Eri away stuff like Rare Candy, which is nice. So it'll help slow them down a little bit, but I've been having a lot of fun with this deck. It is a very interesting deck. It doesn't really play like a normal Pokemon deck, which I like. It kind of is a weird puzzle piece because your 3-prize attacker is pretty fragile to a lot of the guys you have to play against in the format, like Goldango, Charizard, Gardevoir. Like most decks can 2-shot it, and when you're getting your 1 attacker 2-shot, it's a 3-prizer. It can be very tough to play around. So this is the deck I played at locals, and I'm gonna hop back into it once I get to the first game. Alright, we have game 1, round 1 here. So I win the die roll, and my opponent, it looks like they're playing Grimmsnarl. So they're going to get the Ultra Ball here for that good old Impidimp. They do get the Badoo lead, which is nice. They're going to have that pivot without having to use an energy. So they can pretty safely get an attachment down on like a Monkey or an Impidimp if they so choose. And I have the Monkey lead, which isn't the greatest lead ever, but it is a 1-prizer, so if my opponent does sack like Rare Candy plus Grimmsnarl turn 2, like I'm in an okay position here. So draw for turn, and I do have the Arven in the hand, it looks like, and I'm going to attach that Psychic Energy to the Munkidori so that I can get off the TM Evo play. And I'm looking, and it looks like I prized the pink card, unfortunately, but fortunately, I do have an Absol and 2 copies of Nest Ball in the hand already, so that's going to help me get my deck thinned out a little bit here. I think here I'm looking for another Munkidori and then probably either like Kangaskhan or Pecharunt. And I'm thinking, okay, my opponent's playing the, I guess I could if I had one more out to a ball search card, I could have searched like Latias, Pecharunt, Kangaskhan to be able to draw 2 cards. And my opponent gets a nasty top deck of the Rare Candy there to be able to evolve into the Grimmsnarl, which means that my Munkidori in the active is going to be knocked out, unfortunately, but I do have the Mist Energy in hand to be able to get an attack off onto this Grimmsnarl, which is pretty nice. And it looks like my opponent is going to shuffle, but then just go back in for the Arven, which is a pet peeve of mine for sure. I mean, maybe they didn't know what they wanted to do. They probably were a little bit thrown off by the top deck Rare Candy, probably changed their game plan. But see a Secret Box, grab a Team Evolution, or an Arven grabs the Secret Box and the Technical Machine Evolution, but my opponent shuffles again, but they're probably just going to go back in again. Yep, and they're just going to discard their whole hand for Secret Box after shuffling. And yep, they're going to grab Spikemuth, the Air Balloon, I'm going to assume probably a Lily for next turn. I really don't like the use of the Arven or the Secret Box here, because you're playing against an Absol deck, so you want to keep 2 live cards in hand as much as possible. Because now, right, he's going to play Spikemuth and grab another copy of Impidimp. And then the hand is going to be down to Air Balloon plus Lilies. And obviously, as an Absol player, I'm going to be getting rid of the Lilies every single time. So it's a no-brainer pretty much there. And especially because I think my opponent commits to the attack with the Grimmsnarl here instead of the item lock, which I think is also probably not great. I probably would have gone for the item lock here if I was my opponent. It's going to force me as the Absol player to attack into your 2-prizer with my 3-prizer, and you prefer me to not hit into your Grimmsnarl first. You prefer that oh my god, and he got the Arven off the prize. That's crazy. So I ripped the Lilies. It's a no-brainer. It's going to get him way less cards than Arven. But like as the Grimmsnarl opponent, you want me to attack into Badoo. You don't want this big old Grimmsnarl taking a bunch of damage. Yeah, the Grimmsnarl is going to get hit for a bunch of damage, and my hand is pretty dead here. So I'm just going to kind of hope my opponent's hand is also pretty dead here. And there's the Arven gets slammed down. I'm not sure what Arven really wants to grab here. I mean, he could grab like Buddy Poffin to kind of keep his board set up a little bit more. which isn't too bad. I mean, I think he was down. I think he got rid of his Devo TM, and there might be still like an Evo TM left in the deck that he could grab. So it's actually just the Nest Ball off the Arven, and the Nest Ball is going to get played here more than likely. So I imagine Nest Ball is either going to grab like a Munkidori, or it's going to grab... Okay, so there's the Morgrim off of the Spike Myth, and then Nest Ball is going to grab an Iron Bundle, which, okay, I kind of was hoping my opponent did not, like, commit to a bundle. Committing a bundle here is interesting. Yes, you are taking a prize off of the board, but I'm always going to feed you a one prizer here. I don't think there's any world where I don't. And now with the promotion of my Absol, like my Absol could have had a bunch of damage on it, and then it's very likely that you get the knockout on the following turn because you have a Morgrim down, and I have no Munkidoris in sight. And there's the Fezandipiti's going to come down, and I'm going to draw 3 cards off that, and then it actually does not take 2 damage from Risky Ruins because this is a dark type. But looking at my discard pile, I don't believe I have any dark energy in there, but I do have access to a Munkidori. I'm going to attach the Bravery Charm here to the Absol. Unfortunately, I have no more outs to Pokemon in my deck, so I'm just going to attach the Fezandipiti here on the off chance I have to attack with it later. Alright, and then off of this Mega Absol, I'm going to discard another one of my opponent's Lily's Determinations. But with the Stadium Bump plus the removal from the hand, it looks like I'm in an okay spot here. But my opponent draws another Arven here. And the nice thing about the Absol deck is you can kind of run your opponent out of the supporters for the late game. So we see a Devo, which is pretty useless against my deck. Then we see the Ultra Ball. I imagine the Ultra Ball is going to probably go grab a Grimmsnarl, and my opponent shuffling his deck when he's going to go right back in. I'm going to have a talk with this guy at Locals on Monday. I'm like, hey man, you're ruining my footage here. Shuffling 1,000 times, you're about to go back in. Yep, we see this 1,000 shuffles, and then the Ultra Ball played immediately to go back into the deck. And it's just going to probably grab another copy of Grimmsnarl, which is what I would suspect. But it looks like my opponent's going to go for the Frostlass. I would just assume here that they do not have access to another Grimmsnarl. The other one is probably in the prize cards, which means this Arven should have probably grabbed the Night Stretcher to be able to attack into Absol. Considering how weak my board is, it's probably a good thing to try to put pressure on my Absol. But yeah, now the Itchy Pollen's going to come here, and this damage is like pretty inconsequential. So I'm going to just draw. And let's see. I think from here, I think I should have a supporter in my hand. I have 1,000 cards in my hand. I go for the Boss's Order on the Morgrim. And then I think I'm just going to knock it out, get rid of this Bloodmoon, take another prize. Badu gets promoted. I think that's a Boss's Order, but Boss Order is not terrible here. You can always Boss Order up the Pecharunt, and then it forces me to get rid of the energy off of my Fezandipiti. But no Boss Orders used here, just an Itchy Pollen. And I'm going to bench Yveltal here just to be able to have another pivot. If my opponent wants to put one of my guys into the active spot, I can then use my Yveltal as a pivot. And then, yep, the Claw of Darkness is going to take another person's entire hand away. Alright, we get into round 2 here, and I'm going to be still playing this good old Absol box deck. My opponent is going to be rocking the Dragapult deck, and I believe I won the die roll here. So I'm going to tell my opponent to go first. I always want to get that TM Energize into play to be able to accelerate to my guys, and it seems like, oh, actually, I guess I lose the die roll here. I lied. And I play the Pokégear here because I know that more than likely I'm going to end up getting Bedewed, so I'm going to grab the Arven here. Arven is going to be able to get me something at least. I bench a second monkey, and I believe I play a Vessel there for 2 Dark Energy. What I'm going to probably end up doing is attaching Dark Energy to Munkidori, and then just benching Absol and passing. Alternatively, I could also not bench the Absol so that it doesn't get bosses ordered, but more than likely my opponent's going to be able to play a draw supporter over like a boss's order. And then if they pairing boss's order with Badu, then it's kind of bad because now I have a big ol' Absol in the active. But I did have a Penny in my hand, so I felt pretty confident in doing this. My opponent's also going to commit a Fezandipiti here. So, I mean, I don't really hate it considering you're going to put a Badu into play. So if your Badu gets knocked out, you can just draw 3 cards off of the Fez. Let's see, my prize pack is a Rockets and a Hops pack. I get a Snorlax, I get a Postwick, and I get a Hops Choice Band. So it's pretty funny. I get all themed cards to that prize pack. But let's see, my opponent is more than likely going to want to draw an energy here. Yep, there's a Luminous Energy to attach and retreat. But my opponent's actually going to commit to a different line here, which kind of sucks because they did bench the Badu, but they're going to be able to get another copy of Dreepy down with this Ultra Ball, and then use the Evo TM to evolve into double Dracloak. This is going to help accelerate their board a lot here. But I did get the Arven last turn off of the Pokégear, so I can use the Precious Trolley just to kind of fill my bench back up. I'm looking for Pecharunt, Latias, and then my last Pokemon is probably going to be Kangaskhan. Just be able to fill my hand back a little bit more. I already have the double monkey down, so I'm just kind of getting the rest of the guys in. I was thinking on the last spot here because my opponent can't always get like the retreat lock. So my thought was, okay, maybe I can get like the Yveltal here. I thought, okay, maybe I can get the Psyduck here. But I felt pretty okay leaving this bench spot open. I didn't know if my opponent was playing, I didn't know if my opponent was playing the copy of Dusknoir yet, because I haven't seen anything to indicate that yet in his list. My opponent is, in fact, playing the Dusknoir package, which I think I learned this turn, but I couldn't have known it at the moment. And sorry if you hear any like coughing. I am feeling a little bit under the weather today, so I'm taking my day off here to kind of relax and recover and drink some hot tea. So it's a little bit hard to talk a lot, so if I'm not as talkative as usual, you probably know why. All right, and so then I get the TM Turbo Energize off there to my Absol. So my board's looking pretty solid. Got a Kangaskhan on the active. It's got an energy attached to it, and then I have an Absol with 2 energy and a Munkidori. So my energy switch can be pretty solid here in the future. And my opponent is going to attach an energy to the active Dreepy. I probably would have liked this energy attachment attached to a Dracloak on the bench, just because on the off chance that you miss, you still have an energy attached to your Dracloak, and now you have an energy attached to Dreepy, which isn't super great because you could have definitely threatened to attack with the Dragapult this following turn. But I'm just going to get my little draw 2 off of my Absol, and then I'm going to be able to get my Claw of Darkness down. I can kind of rip a card out of my opponent's hand here. So boom, there's Claw of Darkness. Look at my opponent's hand, and I'm going to get rid of one of these copies of Iono. More than likely my opponent's got Iono me again, but Dragapult's usual win condition in the endgame is going to be to Iono you low, so you're not able to threaten the Dragapult and then just take like a big KO on one of your guys. So if I can prevent that, that'd be great. You know, my opponent's already down 1 Iono with my attack, so if they use the second one that's in their hand, then they're not going to be able to find an Iono as reliably in the late game. And I'd rather get Iono'd now while I still have a lot of cards in my hand. The hardest part about this deck is kind of choosing what resources to take away from your opponent, so that you can play around it into like the mid and late game, so that you know, like, okay, if my opponent on average, like if their deck on average plays like 2 copies of Night Stretcher, right, and they've used 1 and I Claw of Dark is another 1 away, the chances of them having that third Night Stretcher are incredibly low, so I can kind of build my game plan around that. So we see a Fezandipiti use in double Dracloak here, and I think unfortunately for my opponent, he's not slamming Dragapult at Neo Upper, which isn't great. So okay, we see the air balloon there to retreat into the Dracloak, and then energy attached to that same one. I think I would have probably attached the Luminous Energy to the Dracloak that doesn't have the air balloon. That way, if I have Boss's Order like I do here, I'm not losing my energy and the air balloon as a pivot, which is unfortunate. And look at my opponent's hand. And they actually did have the Dragapult. So like I said, right? If that Fire Energy was attached to a Dracloak last turn, then that energy would be... The Luminous Energy could have gotten attached to the same Loke, and then the Dragapult attack would have gone off there. But like a slight mistake for my opponent there in not benching the... or not attaching the energy to the right benched Pokemon. I think maybe they were thinking, okay, if I get into another Dracloak, I can just evolve it and then it'd be fine. But in Pokemon, there's always the chance that you whiff. So you kind of want to play around yourself whiffing. Like, okay, I know I have, you know, Lily for 8 plus 2 Dracloak. So I'm looking at the top 12 cards in my deck, drawing 10 of them. But is there a Dracloak or out to Dracloak in the top 10 cards in my deck, considering I have 2 Dracloak on the board and I've already used 2 Ultra Balls? So it's a little bit suspect. There's another Iono. So now I know my opponent only has 1 more Iono in their deck. And I'm still getting Iono to a pretty reasonable number, right? I got Iono at 5 and Iono at 4. So, oh my god, and my opponent rips the Neo Upper off the Iono. They're so goated. And yeah, I mean, fortunately for me, my opponent has not been able... did my opponent not evolve into Dust Flops there? That's interesting. Because they definitely had one down previously, so I definitely would have liked to see that come down at some point. Alright. Alright, so the rest of that damage there is going to go to the Latias on the bench, but because I do have the double Munkidori in play, I can just go for the Claw of Darkness, but I actually have an even funny, or not a Claw of Darkness for the terminal period, but I actually have a funnier play here. Because I do have access to the hammer, I can hammer away my opponent's active Dragapult's energy, and because of that, my opponent does not have a way of attacking next turn with the Dragapult, right? Because they're down in air balloons. I know they can't pivot this. They haven't shown me anything to indicate that they'd be playing Rare Candy potentially, to potentially attack with this benched Dragapult, or a benched Dreepy and a Dragapult. Also, I could terminal period knock up this Dragapult, but then there's a chance that this can come up, or a Bloodmoon can be able to come up. So I like this play of hammering the active and then hitting my opponent again. So now this way, I can prevent them from getting into a Bloodmoon a little bit more. It's going to be a little more difficult for my opponent to get into Bloodmoon there, because I'm still going to be at 3 prizes, so they would have to find some way to get 2 energy onto a Bloodmoon, which is basically impossible with the current Dragapult lists. And then this Dragapult's also just stuck in the active with 200 damage on it. So even if my opponent wants to use a Dusclops plus a Jet Headbutt, it's only 120 damage. I guess I could have also played around this. I moved 6 damage from Latias, so I could have moved this to 140, and then this doing 120 plus Jamming Tower would actually knock out my Mega Absol, which could be pretty bad. But in that scenario where that happens, I guess I can move like 1 damage off of this and knock out Fezandipiti and then maybe be fine. My opponent's still at 6 prizes, so even if they do like a combination of like knocking out Absol and then knocking out Latias or Bloodmoon, I'd still be at 1 prize, and then I just have to move over 1 with Monkey and then hit 1 heads on the Kangaskhan and then it'd be game. So there's a couple different little lines here that I could go for. But I like this play a lot. Oh, I'm actually going to Boss's Order up the Dreepy. I lied. I'm still nasty with it. Okay, so I think maybe this is a slight misplay, but I guess I already discarded my opponent's Bloodmoon earlier. So I'm gonna let him keep those because he's got 2 in his hand. I don't really care about the Dreepy too much. I'm gonna get rid of the Switch because the Switch is gonna give him more reliable outs to the Bloodmoon. So I think maybe it was better to just hit the active Dragapult because now it gives my opponent the Fezandipiti. But maybe it's also fine because I used the double Munkidori to knock out a Duskull, so I'm already giving my opponent the 3 cards. Let's see. I think my opponent draws an Ultra Ball there off of this copy of Fezandipiti's Flip the Script. So if they discard 3 cards and choose to grab the Bloodmoon Ursaluna here, it's like fine if they were to take the knockout here. Because again, I go down to 2 prizes with this play instead of 3. So then I would just need 1 heads to be able to KO the Bloodmoon, or I would just need a Boss's Order to knock out Fezandipiti because I do have damage on my board. I already have an Energy and a Dark, and I also have the Charm in my hand, so there's also the option on this turn to be able to, so there's also the option this turn to be able to, attach the Charm to my Latias, move 1 damage counter over. But because my Absol's a bunch of damage on, I can just terminal period Dragapult once my opponent passes, and that's going to be round 2. Alright, and for round 3, I'm going to hit another Dragapult and lose the die roll again, unfortunately. And looking at my hand, it's just a bunch of nothing. I do have the Town Store for the potential next turn to be able to accelerate energy to something, but looking at the rest of my hand, there's nothing really going on here. So I'm kind of hoping my opponent's going to have a slower start as a Dragapult player. I've seen Ultra Ball for the Dreepy off the bat, which is a good indicator that my opponent's hand's not super crazy, right? More than likely, if you're him, you're going to slam something like a Lily or a Poffin before like committing your resources to that. Alright, and then we're going to see the Hilda get played here. It's going to grab Balloon Mist Energy and a Drakloak. It's a pretty good follow-up supporter for turn 1, considering his hand is also pretty bad, but getting a Drakloak and an energy down is going to be pretty solid. It's going to help you get to that Dragapult a little bit quicker. Probably would attach energy to the bench. Dreepy here is probably fine. I mean, what are the chances that I go for Mind Bend? And here's the Savior Pokégear. I really need this Pokégear to hit, otherwise my hand's pretty dead. Unfortunately, I hit a bad supporter. Fortunately, I do hit a supporter card. So I think I'm just going to have to use that Ciphermaniacs here because my hand is super dead. And yeah, there's nothing going on in this hand right now. So I think I just have to use this Ciphermaniac to stack a copy of something. and more than likely that's going to want to be a copy of Precious Trolley. But the only bad thing about this play is that it's going to leave me susceptible to something like a Bidoof. And I think I actually just forget to stack a second card here, which is a definitely gameplay error by me here, but I don't think it really matters. So, yeah, I'm just going to stack the trolley and hope for the best. If my opponent's got it, they got the turn 2 Bidoof. My opponent does have the Dracloak in hand, so I know they're at least able to get 2 cards off of that. So there's a Dracloak, and they get the top deck Dracloak as well, which is pretty important to be able to, you know, see a couple more cards. See the first Dracloak, grabs an Iono and a Bidoof. Ooh, it's a pretty hard. I think if I'm my opponent, I'm still. I think I'm just grabbing Bidoof, right? Your opponent just didn't do anything last turn. You can kind of use that second. Yeah, I'll definitely grab the Bidoof here, and then use that second copy of Dracloak to be able to keep looking. Because maybe if you find a Lily's Determination here, that'd be pretty solid. Find the Ultra Ball. Ultra Ball is probably the grab here. I think if I was my opponent also, I probably would have played the Jamming Tower just to kind of make it a little bit harder for me to go for the Turbo Energize, but it could also be smart to save them for late game scenarios with like a Bravery Charm. There's the retreat into Bidoof. And then, yeah, just going to be the Itchy Pollen for 10 damage. And then it's going to go over to me. Draw for turn. I draw the Precious Trolley. I cannot play, unfortunately. And yeah, my hand is just super dead again. I'm just going to play this Town Store to kind of thin my deck out. I'm going to Turbo Energize. And yeah, I'm going to have to bench this copy of Frillish. I think this is a fine play, though, because I'm able to kind of accelerate some energy out of my deck. Move over the 1 damage counter with the Munkidori, and then go for the Team Turbo Energize. I'm going to get 1 Dark Energy on a Monkey and a Psychic Energy on a Frillish. So this game is looking super scuffed here at the moment. I have developed no attackers, no threats. And yeah, my opponent's got double Dracloak on the board, which is pretty annoying to deal with. I wanted to save that copy of TM Energize for when I got like an Absol down, but unfortunately with this Itchy Pollen locking me up here, it's going to be a little bit tougher to get into any of the item cards that are going to let me get those Pokemon into play, because my deck does not play any supporter search or supporter based Pokemon search. It's all going to be off of 2 Nest Balls and that Precious Trolley. Yep, we're going to see the Dracloaks get used here. One's going to grab Lily's Determination. I feel like that's a pretty easy grab here. I'm definitely grabbing the Lilies if I'm my opponent. Using the Night Stretcher to kind of look what's in the discard. I guess it could be an energy attachment as well, but it seems like kind of weak. Okay, so I see the Jamming Tower, so I'm definitely slamming the jam. I don't know if I like the evolution here. I think I value more keeping the Dragapult as a Dracloak here. I think if I was my opponent, I probably would have Ultra Balled away the Dragapult and another card in the hand for another copy of Dreepy, and then played the Lily. Then that way, my board is Dreepy, Dracloak, Dracloak, and I'll be able to get some more pluses for the following turn. Also, maybe it is a little bit greedy to not evolve the Dragapult because you're not really sure if you're going to be able to find one on the following turn. But it doesn't seem, I feel like it seems fine because like you're not evolving the Dragapult. Like I don't have a Pokemon on my board that is gonna threaten your Dragapult on the following turn. So I think it's fine. Just leave it as a Dracloak for now and kind of get more pluses off it on the following turn. Because even if the Bidoof here hits me again and then like I evolve and go for Oceanic Gloom, the chances of you finding like Energy Dragapult off of 2 Dracloaks isn't super crazy. But off of 1, it's a little bit more difficult. We actually see a rare candy hit the hand here, which is a pretty cool inclusion. I know a lot of more Dragapult players are starting to include like 1 or 2 copies of rare candy, which has been an interesting development. Probably makes your deck worse since like the mirror, but akin to like some of the other top decks like Guardy, it's going to make your deck a little bit better. You're going to be able to get into those Dragapults a little bit quicker, and especially against this deck, if you can kind of like race them to your Dragapult, then it'll definitely be pretty tough to like combat it, especially like with a board that I'm building currently. Well, I think I'm gonna be able to finally take a prize this turn. If I'm able to retreat this monkey, I can go for an Oceanic Gloom to knock out Bidoof. And yeah, it looks like that's what I'm gonna end up doing here. Yeah, nothing super great is going on over here. I get the energy attachment down to Monkey as well, which is pretty funny. I'm gonna go for the Town Store. Probably gonna grab another copy of Turbo Energize just to be able to thin it out of the deck. I could also grab another copy of Bravery Charm just to kind of also do the same thing and thin it out of the deck. If my opponent wants to use something like a Phantom Dive and put 6 damage counters on one of my monkeys, I can then just attach Bravery Charm to that said monkey, and it's going to give him a little bit of an HP buff. And then, yeah, I'm going to just go for the Oceanic Gloom for the knockout. Keep that 1 damage counter on the Munkidori. There's nothing on my opponent's board that it's really great against at the moment. But yeah, let's see. There's going to be a Dragapult and Energy in the active. My opponent does have the Jamming Tower bump for this turn, which is pretty scary. It's going to... yeah, there's you go. There's a Luminous Energy at the start of the turn. And then, yeah, like I said, if this Dragapult's another Dracloak, then yeah, finding the next Dragapult this turn wouldn't be as hard. And let's see. There is a Latias plus something else flipped here. It's pretty well known to not bench Latias against the Absol box deck unless you're playing a copy of Turo. And not really sure if you can fit the Turo and the Rare Candy. If so, you probably have to like cut a Dragapult in if you wanted to play both of those tech slots. So let's see here. My opponent's going to grab, it looks like maybe Dusknoir. I would also agree with grabbing the Dusknoir. Unfortunately, because I did use that Oceanic Gloom, my opponent cannot use a Rare Candy to evolve it into Dusknoir. But it does look pretty funny. It looks like I'm playing Guardy right now. It doesn't even look like I'm playing Absol box with the Frillish in the active. And yeah, I'm going to just get bodied here by this big Dragapult. And then just 6 damage counters going to go on probably one of the monkeys. I'd probably just put 6 on one and just call it a day. Unfortunately here for my opponent, I am going to be able to take a prize card onto my opponent's Duskull, regardless of where he puts the damage counters. Because even if he puts 2 on one, then 4 just have to go on the other one. I'm just going to promote this one with damage. Go for the Arven here, and I think I can finally just play the pink card, which is pretty funny. But I don't even know if I go for it here, if I go for such a wide board. I guess I just kind of have to. I have to fill up my board and kind of just get into it. I get like the turn 7 Precious Trolley when my opponent's already set up, which is pretty scary. Go for the Precious Trolley here. And I'm probably just going to grab all the guys. I think, okay, looking at my board and then my opponent's board, I can definitely not have to worry about like taking an awkward 1 prize knockout because I've already taken 1 on the Badoo. And now I can use the double Munkidori to knock out Duskull. And then I just kind of have to worry about powering up an Absol, which is going to be kind of difficult because I'm down both of my Energizes, which maybe I didn't have to waste the last one and I could have potentially got it on this turn. But, you know, can't see into the future. But also my opponent... oh, actually, no, I do have the Turbo Energized in hand still. But also my opponent does have that copy of Jamming Tower. So I'm not even able to use it if I wanted to. But I do rip the Risky Ruins off of the Fezandipiti, which I think I did not put in the... oh, okay, so I couldn't find a second copy of Eri for locals today. So I put the Risky Ruins in my deck because I saw Tord played it in some regional, and I thought it was neat. So, yeah, I guess the list at the front of the video is wrong. There is definitely a single Eri in my deck, but I cannot confirm that there is 2 Eris in my deck. So, yeah, whoops. Maybe I'll remember to fix it at the beginning. Usually I record the intro as the first thing, and then everything else kind of gets recorded after. But it looks like this game is starting to swing back around a little bit. You know, I'm able to get my Absol powered up this turn, and then I'm able to get rid of my opponent's Duskull, so that they're not able to get a Rare Candy Dusknoir plus Boss's Order to be able to KO my Mega Absol. So this turn, even if my opponent were to bench like another copy of Duskull, they have to swing into me. And then if I have a Night Stretcher or like another Energy and a Monkey, I'll be able to KO it and then hit into the Dragapult for a good amount of damage. All right, we see the Jamming Tower come down here, and then a Buddy Poffin is going to be played. Yep, we see another copy of Duskull come down, and then probably the last copy of Dreepy is going to come down, but maybe one of the Dreepies is prized. And that's why we don't see it come down here. But the Jamming Tower is definitely a bit annoying, but we do get another potential free prize in the Duskull here. Let's see, the hand is a Night Stretcher, a Duskull. Okay, so you see the Dracloak here. Is Dracloak going to rip us something? Okay. Okay, it's going to get the Boss's Order here. Boss's Order is pretty solid as well. I mean, it's like maybe okay on like one of these following turns, but I guess you can, if you Boss's Order around one of my Munkidoris, then it doesn't really set you up for like a winning play in the future. So I think maybe if I was my opponent, I would have grabbed the Ultra Ball there, because Ultra Ball could have grabbed a copy of Fezandipiti, draw more cards. But the Hawlucha play here is also fine. Also, yeah, if you want to just take the knockout on one of my Pokemon, bring up the Fezandipiti. But the problem with this play is I already do have a lot of cards in hand. So unless you're trying to set it up for like the future Iono plus like counter catcher play to maybe knock out my Latias. But like this turn, right, I can go for like 6 onto Duskull plus terminal period. The Dragapult take 3 prizes, or I could go for a knockout onto my opponent's. Yeah, so there's gonna be my opponent's gonna spread a lot of damage counters around on my board. And then I mean I can still take a multi-prize turn on my opponent. Like if I have Boss's Order to kill Dracloak, I can go like kill Dracloak, kill Duskull. And yeah, my opponent's just going to have an awkward time on the bench here because that Munkidori from the start of the game had 1 damage counter on it. And if it had 1 damage counter on it, it wouldn't have forced my opponent to have put 2 damage counters on a singular thing. So now, then my opponent would have been safe from a double Monkey Ping to knock out Duskull. But looking at this turn now, if I get a 3rd Munkidori down, I should be able to get a triple Monkey Ping onto my opponent's Duskull, and then also hit into their Dragapult, and it's going to set me up for a future turn. I mean, it's scary because my opponent does only have 3 prizes remaining now, so I am susceptible to getting KO'd from one of my Megas for game, but removing the Duskull from play is going to allow me to kind of be fine here. Let's see, my goal here is definitely to get a Munkidori with a Dark Energy down attached to it. So there's the Munkidori in the deck. I'm going to slam that Nest Ball. And I'm going to look, I do believe I have a Vessel in my hand as well to be able to grab that 3rd copy of, or 3rd Dark Energy to be able to attach it to my 3rd Monkey. But I think I'm going to go for the draw 2 here first. I think that's why I'm shuffling my deck. No, I just have the Night Stretcher for it, which is also just fine. And then I can draw 2 of Kangaskhan. I draw Counter Catcher plus Pokégear, which, I mean, the Counter Catcher is, like, fine here. I mean, I can always Counter Catcher up Dracloak and go for, like, an Iono, which isn't a terrible play. Because my opponent, I mean, my opponent probably has a lot of cards in their hand. And, yeah, look, I'm going to go for the Counter Catcher up that copy of Dracloak. And I'm going to remove my opponent's draw cards from the board. And retreat into my Mega Absol. And I think I Penny Latias here, which I really like that. And I'm going to rebench Latias because I do have a copy of Kangaskhan on the bench, and I don't want his big ass to get trapped in the active. But now here, I have 3 Pokemon in play that all have 20 damage on it, so I can just knock out that Duskull on the bench, KO Dracloak. My opponent's going to go down to 2 prize cards. So yeah, 20, 40, 60, knock out the Duskull, get a prize card here, and then I'm going to use the Claw of Darkness. My opponent's got a pretty extensive hand. I definitely don't want to get rid of either of these lilies because he's still got 1 in the hand. And I feel like Night Stretcher is probably the most valuable thing here because it's going to be able to get my opponent a copy of Dracloak out of the discard pile to be able to draw. And my opponent here cannot commit like a Fezandipiti. They can't commit a Latias. So I feel pretty good about that. If my opponent does bench a Pokemon with 210 HP, then I'm just a Boss's Order plus a Monkey move 10 damage counters over, or move 1 damage counter over for 10 damage to be able to just finish the game off here. And I think I would have maybe liked to see the Bloodmoon bench for my opponent here. And we get 3 draws. It's a Buddy Poffin plus a Boss's Order plus another copy of Iono. And yeah, from here it's kind of cooked, right? Because if my opponent goes for a Jet Headbutt, I move 6 damage counters over and he dies. If he goes for the Phantom Dive, it moves 6 damage counters over and he dies. If he retreats into Hawlucha, then I can just Claw of Darkness Hawlucha, and then I'm at 1 prize left, so like it's kind of cooked. You can't trap anything because I have Latias in play, and this Dragapult deck doesn't play anything like the Klefki. And yeah, there's the Phantom Dive, and I'm like, okay, well, I just move 6 over in terminal period, and then that's it. So we beat another Dragapult. Alright, and going to the final round of Swiss here, I'm going to be hitting Goldango. This is the deck's worst matchup, so I was excited to see how I was going to be able to play around my opponent's big old Goldangos that do 1 billion damage. So this deck has historically played a lot of different decks or techs for the Dango matchup. We've seen like the Toedscruel. We've seen now the Frillish. I do really like the Frillish. I don't know if it's better than the Toedscruel, but I'm going to use the Psyduck here. I'm going to get the 2 energy onto the Absol, and then it's going to be my opponent's turn here. I think the goal of this deck is kind of just Absol your opponent until they're going to be able to KO the Absol and then use the Frillish to kind of prevent them from getting more cards down. Let's see, my opponent's got a pretty solid hand here. See the Fighting Gong, it's going to be able to grab one of the rocks more than likely, and then the Nest Ball can grab the other copy of the rock and then just draw 3 cards. So then boom, that's one of the 3 cards added to the hand. There's also the copy of Vessel in the hand to be able to get 2 energy. So the knockout on the Psyduck is pretty much guaranteed here, which is definitely not very good. You don't want to give your opponent a 1-prizer that early into the game. And pretty solid draws there off of the Lunar Cycle. There's an Arven and a copy of Buddy Poffin. Buddy Poffin's going to be able to just get more of the Gimme Ghouls out of the deck here. So I think it's more likely it's going to get played next. Yep, and at least one more copy of Gimme Ghoul is going to come down here. My opponent wants to potentially commit to a Genesect. That's also an option, but I think into this matchup, I would like it's less likely for me to put down Genesect into a matchup where it's a little bit worse to get it down. But I guess there is a commitment here of, let's see, probably a Nest Ball here, or either a, yeah, I assume it's going to be like, yeah, Nest Ball plus Air Balloon. But Nest Ball for Genesect feels like not great here, considering, you know, what can come down is going to be my Absol, going to be trying to snipe some of these movement cards or some of the, like, the Turos. So if you're not holding a Turo, it's like maybe fine to commit the Genesect, but then you're kind of having to accept that, okay, on my next turn, my opponent is going to be able to, my opponent is going to have to, you're saying that you're committing one of your Turos to picking up Genesect. That means if one of my Turos get Claw of Darkness out of my hand, then it's pretty much just cooked. So unfortunately here, because for my opponent, he did take a prize card, so I can potentially get into something like Countercatch for Genesect plus use Claw of Darkness. But I really like maybe potentially just bringing up the copy of Gholdengo that has no energy attached to it, and then hitting that with a Claw of Darkness. I do get the Countercatcher off of the what is his name? Off of the Fezandipiti, which is pretty nice. Then I can rip a card out of my opponent's hand, and he has a billion cards in hand. And I'm just looking here. I think I'm just getting rid of the Arven. Arven's going to allow him to get some more cards. But if I get rid of Vessel, then the Arven has to be used to grab a Vessel, which also isn't that bad. So I think that's the decision here. I don't really care about Boss's Order. So I'm going to end up getting rid of the Arven there, which I don't know if that's right. I think maybe getting rid of Vessel is going to be a little bit better there, just because then the Arven is going to have to use to committed to put down or to get another copy of Vessel out of the deck. And then if with a copy of Vessel out of the deck, there's less likely that the opponent is going to draw more copies of Vessel off of their Genesect or off their Gholdengos. So that's going to be a lot harder for my opponent to draw into like the energy cards that he's going to want to knock out this Mega Absol in one hit. So you see here, my opponent is just going to slam a bunch of draw cards. They're going to use one of their Turos here. So now one of the Turos is used, which is pretty useful information for me. And then there's going to be 4 cards drawn off of Gholdengos. And then more than likely, we're going to see the knockout here onto the Mega Absol. There's a Secret Box in the hand. There's a Fighting Gong. There's a Vessel. So I'd be very surprised if this Absol lived to see another day. Yep, okay, let's see. There's a copy of Fighting Gong. Fighting Gong is going to just grab a copy of Fighting Energy, and then I assume like either a Superior Energy is going to come down here, or a... Yep, there's the SER. It's going to be able to get rid of 2 things out of the hand. Let's see what my opponent wants to get rid of. I think, you know, maybe getting rid of one of the Vit Bands. Getting rid of Vit Band is probably not great here. You probably want to keep that. Yeah, getting rid of Boss here feels weird, but it's probably also just fine. I think at this point in the game, you can also just get rid of the Artisan. And then, yeah, is going to be discarding something as well. And it's going to be discarding an Arven, so he's going to grab 2 energy out of the deck. I guess there's only 1. And then the 4 energy grabbed off of the Superior Energy Retrieval. And yeah, this is just going to be bang. And I'm going to count on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then, yep, so that's 7. So my Absol is going to get knocked out here. And I think a pretty big misplay here on my end is I don't end up going for the Frillish lock here, which I end up going for the Yveltal lock. I go for Iono plus Yveltal, which is probably incorrect. it's probably right here to go for like the counter catcher onto the Genesect, plus use the Frillish, because the Frillish is in my hand, and I do get the copy of Bravery Charm here off of the Town Store. And yeah, I'm going to commit to the Yveltal here, which is probably incorrect because I do have Psychic Frillish in the hand. So I think this game plays out a little bit differently if I'm able to item lock my opponent. They're only down 1 SER, so again, like, it's very unlikely that they don't draw into one, and I'm going to bench the Frillish anyway, which it probably doesn't make any sense here if I'm not using it for the item lock. I probably just could have saved that spot for like a Munkidori if my opponent wanted to potentially like hit into me, but now I don't have the bench spot there to be able to threaten the Munkidori. And then like it looks like my opponent off of the draw, they get 1 SER into the hand, which is not good for me because it's going to get them 5 energy back of the 7 that are in their discard pile. And looking at my opponent's board, right, they have 1 energy attached to a Gholdengo, 1 energy attached to Solrock, and they have 7 in the discard, so that's 9 energy. Usually the deck plays 12, so then that way if my opponent, if I were to commit to Frillish here, attach to Charm, and then item lock them, then even if my opponent does have 3 more energy in the deck, they have to commit to all 3, and then I can use my Frillish to item lock them pretty much until the game is over, as long as my opponent's not playing something like a Lana's Aid. If my opponent also has the Lana's Aid in their deck, then they can just knock out 2 more Frillish, then the game's over. So you're really just kind of playing around their list at that point. But I think at this point, because my opponent does have like all of those energies back into their hand, it's going to be pretty awkward to mount a comeback here. And we see the Solrock user to draw 3 more cards, and then the SCR is more than likely going to come down as well to be able to recover those energy while my opponent's not getting item locked, which again, probably silly on my part to just not use the Frillish here, because yeah, now all the energies are back into the hand, and there's pretty much no win condition for me here. It's just kind of waiting until my opponent draws a copy of Turo, which, I mean, I could hope the second Turo is prized and I can just kind of run down these Genesects until, you know, Kingdom comes. So I'm going to get to draw 2 more cards off of that, and then Frillish, and then just keep this Yveltal loop kind of going. And it looks like my opponent's going to try to threaten to use the attack with the Genesect here. And I'm going to penny up one of my guys, bench the Munkidori, and start moving some damage over to this Solrock. And then, yeah, we're just going to kind of see my opponent's going to just start drawing a million cards. And yeah, there's a second attachment to Genesect. So now I have to pick a different target to try to get rid of. And as you see, like in this scenario, if my opponent had 7 energy in the discard pile and they started attaching to Genesect to potentially go for this attack, then I could like counter catcher up. Actually, it's probably right here to let my opponent get the attack onto this Genesect, and then I can counter catcher the Gholdengo and then just clutch that one until it dies, and I get 13 clutches on the Gholdengo. But I bring up Lunatone here, which is probably wrong. I want to make my opponent commit the energy to the Genesect, so I think this is also another slight misplay, because if I assume my opponent doesn't play more than 3 metal, which most Gholdengo lists do not, I'd say like 99.999% of them don't, then it's a pretty safe play here to just let him KO my Yveltal and then, like, yeah, counter catcher up another Gholdengo and then just kind of put infinite damage counters on it until I probably win the game. But yeah, then there's a secret box that comes down here, and the secret box is just going to grab that second copy of Turo. Yep, and then it's pretty unlikely here that I'm able to win from this game state, because now if my opponent picks up Lunatone, right, then they have to commit a I have to commit to bringing up like either Gholdengo or Genesect, and they can just KO me with the 1 metal pretty much. So even, yeah, my opponent's gonna have to discard 3 energy here, and it's pretty inconsequential because even if I item lock them, they should just still have enough raw energies to be able to win eventually. And there's a Vessel away on the Lunatone, and then that's going to get failed because all the energies are in the hand. Yep, there's a KO onto Yveltal. And yep, I just promote King here, draw a card. And I think from here, the game is pretty much lost. I think my opponent just has too many energies in their deck to be able to try to combat this. And then, yep, I get a Pokégear for the Iono. And I think maybe my win condition here is like a potential deck out, but even if so, I only have the ability to clutch my opponent's Soul Rock for 3 more turns before it's KO'd, and I can't really take another meaningful knockout onto another Pokemon, and my opponent doesn't have enough Metal Energy in their deck so that, like, they have 1 on Genesect and 1 on Goldango, so even if I counter catcher up a Goldango, there's pretty much nothing that can prevent my opponent from attaching another metal to a Goldango and attacking with it. So, like I said, on that one turn, I probably should have just allowed my opponent to attack with the Genesect, and then just kind of hope that he didn't play a 4th Metal Energy, and then, yeah, I can just... Even if my opponent uses Turo on the Genesect, and then if I'm item locking them, they would have to, like, use another SER to get back into it. So, I don't know, it's an interesting... The game could definitely go down another interesting line. I don't know if I win using that line, but I think it's definitely more likely than this line, because I think this line was just not great. Yep, we see another draw there, another draw there. And, yeah, there's the Cypher. Cypher's just going to stack some energy for the following turn. Looks like my opponent has 4 energy left in the deck, which is more than enough to knock out a Frillish. So, yeah, the game is pretty much cooked from here. Because even if I, like, retreat into Bloodmoon, knock out Iono, my opponent's going to have, what, 2 Goldangos to be able to potentially do it. So I counter catcher the other Goldango, and I gloom that one. I think my plan here was to, like, go for a... And there's another Goldango, the Goldango for the metal is going to seal the game there. So I think my game plan was to, like, go for another Iono and then go for, like, Bloodmoon. So, yeah, end up losing the last round here with the Absol box deck. Deck is still super fun. I definitely would recommend playing it to locals. As you can see, like, this deck is a really good matchup into, like, Guardy and Dragapult, which are the 2 most popular decks. And then, I guess Goldango's also up there, but yeah, I think your matchup into, like, Charizard's pretty solid if you can kind of prevent them from playing the game for a little bit with Claw of Darknesses. And then your Guardy matchup's really good because you're able to one-shot Guardy with Absol. And your Dragapult matchup is also pretty solid with all the Munkidoris that you play. It's just this Goldango matchup is pretty tough. So thank you guys for watching, and have a good rest of your day. Bye.